The massive starship drifted silently through the inky darkness of space, its sleek hull reflecting pinpricks of distant starlight. Commander J. Park stood at the main viewing window, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the endless void. The ISS Horizon was humanity's latest deep space exploration vessel, a testament to human curiosity and technological achievement. Lieutenant Yun Choi monitored the ship's sensors, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. Suddenly, a strange energy signature flickered on her screen. "Commander," she called out, her voice calm but alert. "We've got something approaching from Sector 7. Jay walked over to her station, studying the readings. The approaching object was massive, far larger than anything in human records. Its profile didn't match any known spacecraft design. "Full sensor sweep," he ordered. Dr. Yan Kim, the ship's lead scientist, joined them. Her eyes narrowed as she analyzed the incoming data. "It's not like anything we've seen before," she muttered, adjusting her glasses. The alien vessel was approaching with calculated precision, its metallic surface shifting and changing in ways that defied conventional physics. The communication systems crackled to life. A series of complex frequencies and mathematical patterns emerged, the first attempt at communication from the unknown vessel. Dr. Kim worked quickly, her fingers racing across translation algorithms. "They're trying to establish contact," she explained, "but their communication method is completely alien." Inside the human ship, tension mounted. The crew knew they were on the edge of humanity's first genuine extraterrestrial encounter. Years of training, simulations, and theoretical preparation were about to be tested. The alien ship moved closer. Its size was overwhelming. The ISS Horizon looked like a small fishing boat next to an aircraft carrier. Intricate geometric patterns moved across its surface, suggesting a level of technological sophistication beyond human comprehension. "They're scanning us," Lieutenant Choi reported. Her voice remained steady, but a hint of nervousness leaked through. The alien sensors probed every inch of the human vessel, penetrating its hull, analyzing its systems, examining the crew at a molecular level. Commander Park remained calm. He had been selected for this mission because of his exceptional ability to maintain composure under pressure. "Maintain standard first contact protocols," he instructed. "No aggressive movements. We're here to explore, not to fight." Dr. Kim continued working on translation. Slowly, fragments of meaning began to emerge from the alien communication. Mathematical equations, scientific observations, complex linguistic structures that seemed to dance between logic and poetry. The alien vessel matched the Horizon's speed perfectly. It was studying them, learning, analyzing. Years of human research and preparation for first contact were about to be put to the ultimate test. Suddenly, a holographic projection appeared on the bridge. A being, if it could be called that, materialized. It was neither fully organic nor completely mechanical. Translucent, with shifting geometric patterns where a face might be, it observed the human crew with what seemed like curiosity. No one moved. Years of training had prepared them for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare someone for actual first contact with an alien intelligence. Lieutenant Choi's hands hovered near defensive systems, just in case. Dr. Kim's translation algorithms worked overtime, trying to make sense of the alien communication. Commander Park stood perfectly still, representing humanity in this historic moment. The alien projection began to pulse with light, sending complex mathematical sequences that Dr. Kim frantically tried to interpret. Was this a greeting? A threat? An attempt at understanding? The moment stretched like an eternity. Outside the ship's windows, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Millions of years of human evolution, thousands of years of technological development, decades of space exploration. All of it had led to this single moment of potential connection between two completely different civilizations. Commander J. Park took a slow, deliberate breath. Whatever happened next would change human history forever. The alien vessel continued to match their speed, its intentions still unclear. The first encounter had begun. The research laboratory aboard the alien vessel hummed with an otherworldly energy. Krell, the lead Zorn researcher, carefully positioned the human DNA sample under an advanced quantum microscope. His tentacle-like appendages moved with precision, adjusting delicate instruments that could analyze matter at the most fundamental levels. At first, the genetic sample appeared ordinary. Thousands of previous alien encounters had taught the Zorn researchers to expect predictable biological patterns. But something was different about these human genetic sequences. Something strange. Dr. Yeon Kim stood nearby, equally fascinated. She had been brought aboard the alien vessel as part of a collaborative research agreement, a gesture of goodwill between two species attempting to understand each other. Her eyes narrowed as she watched Krell's analysis. "Look here," Krell muttered, more to himself than to Kim. Holographic displays erupted around him, showing complex genetic maps that twisted and transformed in three-dimensional space. Markers that should have been static were moving. Sequences that should have been dormant were showing subtle signs of activity. The human DNA was breathing, not literally, but in a way that defied conventional biological understanding. Genetic markers pulsed with a rhythm that suggested something more than simple genetic code. It was almost like the DNA was alive, thinking, adapting, waiting. Krell had studied millions of species across hundreds of star systems. He had seen genetic diversity that would challenge human imagination. But this was different. The human genetic structure contained layers of complexity that seemed almost intentional, as if some incredible adaptive mechanism was hidden just beneath the surface. "These sequences," he said to Kim, "they're not random, they're prepared." Kim understood immediately. The genetic markers showed potential pathways of adaptation that seemed impossible. Most species had genetic variations that allowed slow evolutionary changes over thousands of generations. These human genetic sequences suggested something else entirely: the ability to change rapidly, almost instantaneously, in response to extreme conditions. The research team expanded. More Zorn scientists gathered around the samples, their advanced scanning equipment working overtime. They discovered hidden genetic switches that could potentially activate entire new biological capabilities. Some sequences looked like emergency protocols, genetic fail-safes that could be triggered under extreme stress. "It's like their DNA is a complex survival machine," one researcher whispered. Another added, "These aren't just genetic variations, these are strategic adaptations." Deep within the genetic code, they found something even more surprising: embedded sequences that seemed to store information, not just biological information, but potentially cultural, historical, and environmental data. It was as if human DNA was a complex recording device, capable of preserving and transmitting information across generations in ways no other known species could. Dr. Kim explained some details to the Zorn researchers. Humans had evolved on a planet with extreme environmental variations. Their genetic history was a story of survival against incredible odds, changing climates, massive extinction events, constant challenges that had forced their species to become incredibly adaptable. The Zorn researchers worked for days, their excitement growing with each new discovery. They realized they weren't just looking at a genetic code. They were looking at a living, dynamic system of survival and adaptation. Krell made a startling observation. "These genetic sequences," he said, "they're not just about survival. They're about potential, unlimited potential." The implications were enormous. If these genetic mysteries were true, humans weren't just another species to be cataloged. They were something entirely different. A biological system so complex and adaptive that it challenged everything the Zorn understood about life and evolution. As the research continued, more questions emerged than answers. What could these genetic sequences do under the right conditions? What hidden capabilities lay dormant within human DNA? And most importantly, what did this mean for the future of both species? The universe suddenly seemed much larger, much more mysterious. And humans, once considered a young, relatively unremarkable species, now appeared to be something else entirely. Something extraordinary was waiting to be discovered. The galactic radiation burst came without warning. A massive wave of energy swept through space, powerful enough to destroy entire planetary systems in seconds. Most species would have been instantly obliterated. The humans adapted. Commander J. Park felt it first. A strange tingling started at the base of his spine, spreading quickly through his body. His skin began to change, not painfully, but with a sense of purpose. Cellular structures rearranged themselves with lightning speed, creating new protective mechanisms that defied all known biological understanding. On the bridge of the ISS horizon, something remarkable happened. Lieutenant Yoon Choi's eyes flickered, shifting from their normal brown to a strange silvery blue. Her neural pathways expanded, processing information at speeds that would have killed any other species. Synapses fired with impossible complexity, creating new connections faster than the most advanced computer could calculate. Dr. Yeon Kim watched in fascination and slight terror as her own body responded to the radiation. Her genetic structure was literally rewriting itself. Damaged cells repaired instantly, weaknesses transformed into strengths. The human body was becoming something entirely new. The Zorn researchers observing from their ship couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their most advanced scanning equipment struggled to track the changes happening to the human crew. It wasn't just survival, it was complete and instantaneous transformation. Commander Park's muscles grew denser. His bones became more flexible yet stronger. Skin developed microscopic protective layers that could resist extreme temperatures and radiation. But these were just the physical changes. The mental transformations were even more profound. Thoughts became clearer. Reaction times accelerated beyond anything previously possible. The human brain rewrote its own neural networks, creating new pathways of understanding and processing that made previous human intelligence look like primitive computing. The Zorn observation deck Krell watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. "They're changing," he whispered to his fellow researchers. "They're actually changing in real time." The radiation continued to wash over the human ship. What would have been a death sentence for any other species became a catalyst for evolution. Genetic memories surfaced. Ancient survival strategies encoded in DNA for thousands of generations suddenly became active. Lieutenant Choi's hands moved over the control panels with impossible precision. She was calculating complex navigation routes, running system diagnostics, and analyzing the radiation burst, all simultaneously. Her brain had become a living supercomputer. Dr. Kim discovered she could now understand complex mathematical equations by simply looking at them. Genetic knowledge from generations of human scientists seemed to flow through her consciousness. It was as if the entire human scientific history was now directly accessible. Commander Park felt something else. A deep connection to his crew, to his ship, to the very fabric of space around them. The radiation had triggered something more than physical change. It had awakened a collective potential hidden within human DNA. The Zorn ship maintained a careful distance. Their most advanced sensors were struggling to comprehend what was happening. The humans weren't just surviving the radiation. They were using it, transforming it, becoming something more. Weeks of genetic research suddenly made sense. Those mysterious DNA sequences the Zorn had discovered were more than just adaptive markers. They were a complex survival system waiting to be activated. And now they had been. Outside the ship, space itself seemed different. The radiation that should have destroyed everything instead became a tool, a source of energy, a catalyst for something unprecedented. The humans were rewriting the rules of biological existence. Commander Park looked at his hands. They were the same hands he'd always had, but they were different, stronger, more capable, connected to something larger than himself. Lieutenant Choi turned to him, her now silvery eyes reflecting an intelligence that was both human and something more than human. "Sir," she said, her voice calm and clear. "We're ready." The Zorn researchers realized something profound. This wasn't just an evolutionary adaptation. This was the activation of a biological system so advanced, so complex, that it challenged everything they knew about life, survival, and potential. Humanity had just become something entirely new. The Zorn battleship appeared suddenly, blocking the ISS Horizon's path. Its massive hull gleamed with weapon systems that could destroy entire planetary networks in moments. The message was clear: neutralize the potential human threat. Commander J. Park stood perfectly still on the bridge. His recently evolved abilities allowed him to process potential attack scenarios faster than any computer. Around him, the crew moved with a new kind of precision, their bodies and minds transformed by the recent genetic awakening. Lieutenant Yoon Choi's fingers hovered above the control panels. Her mind was simultaneously tracking multiple potential defensive and offensive strategies. Where human technology would have taken minutes to calculate, she processed entire battle scenarios in seconds. Incoming communication, Dr. Yeon Kim announced. Her voice was calm, but the alien communication systems trembled with the intensity of her mental transmission. The Zorn leader's holographic projection appeared, a creature of complex geometric shapes and pulsing energy. Humans will be neutralized, the projection stated. Your genetic potential represents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Commander Park didn't move, didn't speak. He simply observed. The first weapon discharge came without warning, a massive energy pulse that would have obliterated any known spacecraft. But the ISS Horizon didn't just survive. It transformed. Microscopic adaptive systems in the ship's hull absorbed the energy, redirecting it. Defensive mechanisms that were purely theoretical moments ago became reality. The human ship didn't just protect itself. It began to change, developing new protective layers faster than the Zorn could modify their attack. Lieutenant Choi's communication systems came alive. But this wasn't traditional communication. She was broadcasting, sending complex mathematical sequences that acted like both language and weapon. The Zorn computer systems began to destabilize, overwhelmed by information patterns they couldn't comprehend. Dr. Kim discovered something remarkable. The genetic changes weren't just physical. They had created a form of collective consciousness among the human crew. Each member could share information, strategy, and adaptation instantaneously. The Zorn battleship fired again, multiple energy weapons that could destroy entire planetary systems. But something extraordinary happened. The human ship didn't just defend, it began to mirror and then counter the alien weapon systems. Adaptive technologies emerged from nowhere. The ship's hull became a living system, changing molecular structure to absorb, redirect, and neutralize incoming attacks. What should have been impossible became reality in moments. Commander Park remained calm. His mind was processing millions of potential scenarios, selecting the most effective response. The recently awakened genetic potential wasn't just about survival, it was about strategic adaptation. The Zorn leader's projection began to show signs of confusion. Their most advanced weapon systems were being neutralized by a species they had considered primitive. Each attack was being not just defended against, but turned into a potential counterattack. Lieutenant Choi's communication systems began broadcasting a message, not in words, but in complex mathematical and energy patterns that carried both warning and invitation. The message was clear. Humans were not a threat to be eliminated, but a potential ally to be understood. Dr. Kim monitored the genetic changes happening in real time. The crew's bodies continued to adapt, developing capabilities that blended biological potential with technological innovation. They were becoming something that existed between organic life and advanced technology. The Zorn battleship systems began to fail, not through direct attack but through a complex information network that overwhelmed their defensive capabilities. The humans weren't destroying the alien technology. They were fundamentally changing how it operated. Commander Park finally spoke. His voice carried a frequency that resonated with both biological and technological systems. "We are not your enemy," he said. "We are an evolutionary possibility you haven't understood yet." The confrontation lasted less than 10 minutes. But in that short time, everything changed. The Zorn realized they were facing something unprecedented, a species capable of instantaneous adaptation, collective intelligence, and technological transformation. The ISS Horizon remained intact. The Zorn battleship was disabled, but not destroyed. A message had been sent. Humanity was no longer just another species to be catalogued or controlled. They were something entirely new. The diplomatic chamber was unlike anything humans had seen before. Floating platforms of liquid crystal surrounded a central meeting space where representatives from both species gathered. The Zorn delegation looked nervous, their geometric body forms shifting uncomfortably. Commander J. Park stood at the center, representing humanity. His recently evolved genetic potential made him something more than a traditional diplomat. He could read complex emotional and biological signals that went far beyond normal human communication. "We are not a threat," Park said simply. His words carried multiple layers of meaning: spoken language, biological transmission, and complex mathematical patterns that communicated intention directly. The lead Zorn researcher, Krell, studied the EU human commander carefully. Everything they had known about evolutionary potential was being challenged. Humans were not just another species. They were a living, adaptive system that could transform faster than any known civilization. Genetic records revealed the truth. Humans had evolved on a planet of constant change. Extreme climate shifts, multiple extinction events, continuous environmental challenges. Their DNA was not just a biological code. It was a sophisticated survival mechanism that had been preparing for something larger. Dr. Yan Kim presented their findings. Holographic displays showed how human genetic structures contained adaptive markers that could activate under specific conditions. What the Zorn had considered potential weaknesses were actually complex survival strategies. Lieutenant Yoon Choi demonstrated another aspect of their new capabilities. She could communicate complex scientific concepts through a combination of mental projection, mathematical sequences, and subtle biological signals. Traditional language seemed primitive compared to their new communication methods. The Zorn delegation realized something profound. Humans were not just another species to be categorized or controlled. They represented an entirely new form of evolutionary potential, a living system that could adapt, transform, and understand at speeds previously unimaginable. Krell presented their initial concerns. The human genetic potential could potentially destabilize existing galactic power structures. Their ability to rapidly adapt and transform posed significant challenges to established civilizations. Commander Park's response was unexpected. Instead of aggression, he offered collaboration. The human evolutionary potential could be a resource, not a threat. Their adaptive capabilities could help solve complex scientific and environmental challenges across multiple star systems. The diplomatic discussions continued for what would have been weeks in traditional human time. But with their new evolutionary capabilities, complex negotiations happened in moments. Entire treaties were discussed, modified, and agreed upon through intricate communication networks that blended biological and technological signals. Dr. Kim discovered something even more remarkable. The human genetic potential was not just about individual survival. It represented a collective evolutionary strategy that could potentially help multiple species adapt to changing cosmic conditions. The Zorn slowly began to understand. Humans were not conquerors. They were not a threat. They were a living solution, an evolutionary experiment that could help multiple civilizations survive and thrive in an increasingly complex universe. Lieutenant Choi demonstrated their technological capabilities. Using their new adaptive potential, humans could interface with alien technologies in ways no other species could. Complex computer systems became extensions of their biological potential. Commander Park represented something more than a military leader or diplomat. He was a living example of human potential, a biological system that could think, adapt, communicate, and evolve faster than traditional understanding allowed. The meeting concluded with an unprecedented agreement. Humans would be recognized not as a developing species, but as a potentially critical evolutionary strategy for galactic survival. Their genetic potential would be studied, understood, and potentially shared. As the diplomatic chamber dissolved, the Zorn researchers realized they had encountered something extraordinary. Humans were not just another species to be studied. They were a living, adaptive system that represented the next stage of evolutionary potential. The universe suddenly seemed larger, more complex, and filled with possibilities that went beyond traditional understanding of life, intelligence, and survival. Humanity had become something more than anyone could have imagined.